From Carolla One Studios in Glendale, California, this is the Adam Carolla Show. Adam's guest today, the founder of Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, David Fishof. With Gina Grad on news, Bald Bryan on sound effects, and we'll check out some trending topics. And now, good and proper, Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but to get on. The mandate, you get it on now. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sharing with a friend. We love that about you, right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
Handball, Brian.
Well, it appears I have daddy issues.
All right, so there's some breaking news on the Tiger Woods situation because they recovered the black box. I guess everything's going to have a black box soon.
Yeah, the more modern the car, the more connected, right?
Another name for GSV.
Yeah, and yeah, man. But we all know where to find that. We don't have to get into some diving bell.
Oh, I hope you don't.
Get down to the Marianas Trench to find. Ooh, good name for GSV. You know, now it kind of strikes me that we all are now equipped with our own black box, which is our phone.
Right.
So we're going to be able to be tracked everywhere and, you know, find out. And, you know, they were able to look and see if Tiger was texting, you know, and things like that. Mm-hmm. So we kind of, everything has a black box, and we have our own black box, our phone. You'll know right where everybody is.
Probably the most revolutionary, like in terms of like solving crimes, murders and whatnot, like since the fingerprint and DNA, right? Like now we can tell where you are, when you are, what you're doing, if you're sending a text, if you're downloading something.
Well, and just at the very fact of what cell tower is pinging, you know where you are.
If sometimes Natalia or Sonny will get a text from Olga on a Friday night at 11:15 if I'm out driving with them somewhere, and she'll go, why are you so far away from your house at 11:15 at night? You know, You're supposed to. And, you know, I'm dropping her off at her pimp's place, so I always get on the phone and tell her, don't worry, she's in good hands.
Fine.
But so they went to the Tiger Woods thing, and the Tiger Woods thing was he was going at excessive speeds, and he actually accelerated as he was going over the embankment or into the tree or whatever it was. And I have a couple of thoughts. One is I'm going to circle back to my first thought, which is there was nothing in his system. He was sober. He was fine. Good. Suspend his license anyway, because now he's a full-blown terror.
He's a menace.
The old guys who plow through the farmer's market in Santa Monica, they're not drunk.
Nope.
They mistake the accelerator for the brake. And that's
in
what...
in some ways worse. It's an indictment of your driving.
That's what Tiger did. Yeah, well, first things first. You know, if I watch some football games at the warehouse and have a couple of beers and drive home, I don't plow through farmers markets or drive over curbs or embankments or anything like that, number one.
Rarely, if ever.
Number two, if you wanted to ride shotgun in my car, there's a decent chance I won't be buzzed. Oh. There's a very decent chance, you know, weekday, maybe while the sun is out, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Not after lunch.
Mm-hmm. But with Tiger, there's always the opportunity for him to mistake the brake for the accelerator, vice versa. I mean, so it's very interesting. So if you get pulled over, if you had a, you know, Christmas party here, you had a few pops and you got pulled over, your license would be suspended for a year.
At least, yeah.
And if you were over, you know, 90 years old and it was determined you could no longer safely operate a motor vehicle, your license would be revoked or suspended or whatever it is. Maybe we should look into that with Tiger. I feel like Tiger's had enough trials and tribulations on the open road. Certainly could afford the Uber, maybe even the Uber Black, you know, the SUV, right?
Yeah, the Uber XL.
Uber Lux.
XL, if you're
feeling crazy.
Right. So it's kind of funny where we have this society where we go, whoo, nothing in his system. My thing is like scarier now. Mm-hmm. This person is now actually more frightening. I would not. And I would suggest, if I was a judge, I would say, look, I'm not going to suspend your license, but we do need to get a giant fiberglass Tiger and affix it to the roof of your car so people
know you're
know.
coming.
So if you're riding a bike with your son along the
Right.
highway, to get the fuck out of Dodge.
Well, and that's like what you say about the guys that go up and just beat on somebody on the street. There's no motive. And so there's no way to avoid it.
I'm glad you brought it up, Gina, because I was kind of like searching my mind. The guys who poison their wives or their wives poison their husbands to collect on the insurance policy, I'm not a fan of it, but that's between consenting adults. The guys who just cold cock the Asian guy walking through Manhattan or the Hasidic Jew walking through Brooklyn, those are the scariest people. And I put Tiger squarely in that community.
Yeah,
so,
it adds up.
There's that. Then I started to think about it. And so I'm interested in your thoughts, which is I like memorabilia. I like cars. I like collecting cars. But there's a in the last few years, it's been a burgeoning category of celebrity collector, guitars, watches, locks of hair, the sheets that John and Yoko laid on when they were staying in bed and protesting war and all kinds of stuff. Tiger Woods Hyundai. Tiger Woods Hyundai. That thing is worth something.
Sure.
That thing has value. Now, there's not a ton of other examples, but you can go back, to famously James Dean. He's got his 550 Spider, little bastard. They still don't know where it is. But I was talking to a car expert earlier in the day when I was doing CarCast, and I said, well, that thing's $10 million, like James Dean's car. It's not an apples to apples thing. He said probably more than $10 million if somebody brought that thing to an auction. And then he said an interesting thing that I never thought of. The biggest auction of the year takes place at Pebble Beach. The Gooding auction is on Pebble Beach. He said golfers love this shit.
There you go.
They collect this stuff. So you got these crazy rich golf fans, and then you got Tiger Woods' destroyed Hyundai. And I said, well, what do you think, to the guy? And he said, 6 figures. Like, I thought it is. First things first. All
10
right,
times more than a regular Hyundai.
Indeed.
So some info. If you had that car and you had a Hyundai dealership, would you put it up in display in the showroom?
That's
now,
interesting because
I see the face.
No,
I see the face.
I had the same thought.
You're going to have to prove this one.
Well, it's going to bring in a lot more foot traffic than free hot dogs and snow cones.
True.
On a Saturday. And also, your argument is he survived, especially
That's
when
how good our cars are.
Right. Especially when Tiger rehabs and he's back on the links and maybe wins a tournament or two. You go, look at now, if it had not been for our product. But it's a little morbid, but he'll be recovered by then.
Well, to your point, when I headed straight ahead into a median and flipped the car, I survived because I was in a Toyota Corolla, and my mom bought another Toyota Corolla because it saved her daughter one time. So you're right about that. But will the average person coming in looking for an affordable sedan see that and make that connection right away, or be a little freaked out?
Well, if you're shopping for Hyundais, you're probably not the elite of the elite.
Well,
you're looking for a bargain.
Okay, hold on a second. I have some inside info on this. Number one, I'm pretty sure that was not Tiger's SUV. I'm pretty sure Hyundai or Genesis. I think it was a Genesis SUV. I think they lent it to him as a loaner because he was there for the Genesis Open, right?
Okay, so I don't think it's Tiger's SUV.
Right,
but he was driving it.
But I have the same thought as you, because this bolsters your point a little bit, which is if you're Genesis and you own, it's your car, obviously you have to, why not send it out to the local dealerships, on a sort of, 6-month rotational basis? It's like, hey, this is our flagship SUV. It survived rolling over an embankment with Tiger Woods inside. And you're right, when he's back on the links, it's like, thanks to us.
Yeah. And then I was taking a little deeper dive into it, and I thought initially it would have been provided by a local dealership, but Matt, the moderator, Deandra, explained to me that was a I guess you would call it a early car, a prototype or something that those weren't available. That was provided by Genesis.
It's a corporate deal, right? Yeah. It's
yeah, but it was not the Costa Mesa Hyundai that provided it. It was Hyundai Genesis who provided the car. So now the car's totaled. So the insurance company will pay off the car. And then I guess the insurance company will own the wrecked car. And they usually auction it off. People salvage them, because they'll go, well, the engine, the transmission are still good. We'll pull that out and we'll pull the seats out or whatever it is. But it strikes me that Genesis may want to buy the car back from the insurance company. If it's a $70,000 SUV, you get your check and then you can give them 11 grand.
If it's total, just take it back.
For the total car. Matt thinks Genesis is going to crush it. And now there's
never
a rich,
speak of it again.
Well, there is a rich history of cars. Like if you go look at Jay Leno's Turbine Chrysler, it's like, well, there's only 3 left. The other 5 were crushed. They crush prototype cars. They used to do it routinely, which is weird. Now the car's worth $20 million, but they did crush a lot of stuff. This isn't exactly apples to apples, but would you like to own that car? And I would argue that even if you paid $150,000 for that car, your kids would be happy you bought that car in 20 years.
Absolutely. That's not that much more than a Hyundai Genesis SUV would cost. Also, I think you're right. There's apples to apples, apples to oranges. There's not a lot of comps, I think, in this world. I would say OJ's Bronco is like the closest comp because it's more infamous than famous.
Right.
And that went for $750. So
sorry. The owner said he was willing to part $750 to $1 million. It didn't go that. Nobody.
Oh.
Well, at least he's not going to take $250 for it, I guess is the answer. So I would be interested in following the life of this car, but I would not crush it. I would put a tarp over it and park it in the back of the Genesis headquarters and figure it out. I wouldn't be too hasty to put this thing in a crusher or give it, because if it goes to the insurance company is going to auction it off, I think. That's how
Christy's
it works.
very good friend works for Genesis. I can find out for you. I can always ask.
We should have him on.
I would be interested in the life of that car because, like I said, you go down to Harrah's in Vegas, you can see Bonnie and Clyde shot up car over there. Yeah. You can see the Hitler mobile, the 6-wheel Hitler mobile and all that kind of stuff. So I think Tiger's balled up Hyundai is going to be worth something one of these days. All right. And probably something now. Another, on a car-related note, another thing that was interesting. So I was speaking to this gentleman about ordering his Ford GT, and it's a super car. You got to get on the waiting list. You have to wait 2 years before you sell it.
This is the John Cena CT?
Yes, this is
the one of the ones, obviously.
Yeah, and it's one of those cars, and they got rules. Now, one of the things they offer, because it's pretty exclusive at this point, you're getting your car kind of hand built. You can pick any color you want to paint the car. So you could go in and find a pair of your daughter's tennis shoes and go, I want it that color, or you could pick from their standard colors or whatever. If you pick your own color, and this is a big part of this, you don't want other guys rolling around in your color. You don't want any examples of someone else who might get a color that's yours and good.
Exclusive to you?
Yeah, well, it can't be exclusive to you if you pick a Ford factory color.
Right.
But
it's hot pink
if you picked your own exclusive color and you said, this is the color I would like it, for an additional $10,000, they'll put the color in a vault and will paint no more cars your color.
That's worth
and I was thinking about that, and then I was recalling the conversation we had with Perez Hilton about the egg harvesting when he was starting his family, and for an additional several $1,000s, maybe $500,000, they will not use that woman's egg to create more kids. You can put it in the Ford vault. And I thought it's weird, but it's really the exact same concept. It's I don't want to see anybody running around in my car, and I don't want to see any other kids that look like mine running around. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is apples to apples.
That's fucking
I'd go whole hog. I would get the car, I'd pay the 10 grand, I'd get my own color, then I'd go to the egg harvesting kiosk, get the kid, lock off the eggs, and then sell the kid with the car. I'd throw him like Sammy Hagar would throw a guitar in there. I'd do it with the kid. I'm not an idiot. I'd put him in the passenger seat. Obviously, I'm not gonna.
Right, but you'd focus on the car. It's not like adopt this child and you get a car. It's buy this car and you get.
Yeah. Car guys want the car.
Sure.
All right.
Is there a bargain to that 500K where you're like, okay, they can use her eggs, but it has to be on another continent. I cannot have another child on a playground here in North America that I'm ever into.
Yes, having a weird mind meld with your kid, telling him to kill. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how much it is. I recalled because we talked about it. Perez said it was a lot of money, like it was too rich for his blood, and we got into the kind of ethics of it or the finances of it. But it is interesting that Ford and their supercar, and you as a gay couple siring a kid using an egg that you bought. It's really just the same concept. We want exclusivity, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. On the all right. I was screaming yesterday during March Madness that big corporations needed to unwoke themselves.
Yep.
And as I was screaming about big corporations unwoking themselves, United was putting out a tweet simultaneously that I told Max Zapata to retrieve for us, and he shall share it with us.
Let's see here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gina.
Oh, it says, our flight deck should reflect the diverse group of people on board our planes every day. That's why we plan for 50% of the 5,000 pilots we train in the next decade to be women or people of color. Learn more and apply now.
Women.
All right. I've screamed for a long time the firefighting force should reflect the community. Don't care. Want the best fucking firefighters. Don't care what color, their sex. I don't care what they are. I've never and it's funny, so everyone is woke now, but the thing there's a couple of things. One is it's funny that airline pilot used to be the example. When you'd go, you'd be talking about we want the police force, or we want the firefighter force, or we want the community at Starbucks to represent the community. And we'd go, I just want the best airline pilot. We'd either use surgeon or airline pilot, but a heart surgeon, like I just want to know that my pilot is the most qualified pilot. Well, now we're at pilots. Did we ever think we were going to get to pilots?
And we talk all the time about like addressing the end of the issue as opposed to the root of the issue. Like majority of pilots were either military or they went to flight school. I know someone who went to Embry-Riddle Flight Academy. He was like, 95% dudes. It's a self-selecting sample. There's not much you can do about it on that end, on United's end.
Well, you know who would beg to differ? Debbie Dootson.
Who?
Oh, Debbie Dootson.
Because if she can ride that 18-wheeler, why can't she take it up into the sky?
She's a legacy, though, because she's from the Dootson School of Trucking, and that's her pop. But she should
Donald
know.
Dootson started that trucking school.
She's Debbie Dootson. Yeah, so a couple things. First things first. I don't really care about all the woke shit per se. I mean, it doesn't affect day to day, the firefighters or whatever, the Starbucks employees or whatever. I have thoughts about affirmative action for pilots. And they're going to go, well, they'll just undergo the same training or whatever, but I don't want there to be any other factors in that cockpit other than who flies the plane the best and who's the best qualified. I want no other factors.
No, yeah.
Also, Does anyone in this day and age of get on the plane, duck your head, and turn right with a reinforced cockpit door, does anyone even fucking know who's up there most of the time?
See the pilot.
That's what I was exactly about to say. You could just tell us they're anything. We've never seen a pilot since 2001.
Maybe that's the plan, Gina.
Yeah.
Just have pre-recorded things from like female voices.
Hi,
Yeah.
Oh, it's a new gig for Gina.
I'm Captain Grad. We'll be soaring at 32,000 feet today.
Right, and then the guy with the red hair and the mustache can just click his
Right.
recorder off, and they
Right.
can get going. It wouldn't be a bad gig for the guy who did the housing discrimination commercials.
Yes.
The PSA, hello, my name is Lucius Johnson.
That's right. Diversify yourself.
Right, just have the one guy lay down tampering with, disabling, destroying, a cruising
Yeah.
altitude, whatever. Just lay the spiel down, and no one will ever open the door.
Doesn't he have one where he goes, I'm in the wheelchair?
Oh yeah, there's a wheelchair. I don't know if
Like a
there's an
Baltic
accent
guy.
that comes along with being hobbled, but
I'm in a wheelchair.
I'm in a wheelchair.
because at some point my grandmother ended up in a wheelchair toward the end, but I don't think her accent changed much.
didn't?
Yeah,
It's off the Eastern Bloc.
you may have tweaked it a little bit. I gotta think on that one.
Yep.
So now pilots and United are woke. So we got that to look forward to. But the real insidious part of this is if this was a thing and they made a big thing out of it and it was 5 years from now and you did see your black pilot or your female pilot, then you would go, I wonder if they're here because they're the best or they're here because of this program, which is not what you want anyone thinking from a societal standpoint, whether it's a college campus or a cockpit. Ooh, nice alliteration there. All right. Another thing that I had written down, which is they're talking about Caitlyn Jenner getting into the gubernatorial race.
You are
out
burning
here.
through all my stories.
Sorry.
About that.
Well, you can put a finer point on it,
All
but Caitlyn is taking a look at a governor running for governor for California after the Newsom recall. Caitlyn is weird because Caitlyn is a transgendered person who's pretty Republican last time I checked.
That's quite
And-
the storyline on Kardashians.
Yeah. And also has no idea how podcasting works because every time Caitlyn would occasionally call me just on my cell phone and go, hey, I like that bit you did on Tucker last night. So we know Caitlyn's conservative, but then I would go, why don't you come on to the podcast? And every time I would tell Mike to reach out to Caitlyn's people, they want to know how much you got paid to do a
boy.
podcast. And I was like, it's not how it works. Come in and, plug your line of hair extensions.
Yeah, I would always just remind people in that case that Oprah never paid a guest to be on Oprah. So
Mhm.
if that's the precedent, I don't think we're paying to be a guest.
Good enough for Oprah, good enough
Yeah.
for everyone. Also, an interesting thing as well, I'll circle back to the pilots thing. Silicon Valley has attempted for a long time to get like more diversity amongst its ranks.
Sure.
We need more black programmers or more
Yes.
female or more whatever,
It was a long
Hispanic.
time. It was the dominion of the white nerd, the white
Right,
male nerd.
right. But they have failed in filling their quotas because there's not enough Hispanic women wwho are interested in coding.
But again, a bit of a self-selecting sample. Like these dudes come up loving to play on computers, and they end up loving to work on computers.
Right. So it's what I'm kind of saying is different groups, different genders, different nationalities, they kind of they gravitate toward things. I don't know why they do. I'm going to label it a bad thing. It's just white, more women are preschool teachers.
I was
And
just thinking about my Tessa's preschool. They outnumber them 5-1 at least. And can you imagine if they were sent out an email one day like, "Oh, we're going to try and equal out the numbers"? Like, no, you have good teachers. Just keep it going.
right. And then more firemen are men. So firefighters, I should say, are men.
All
that-
firemen are men.
It just is. So back to the gubernatorial race, and I'll piggyback this into my pilot diversity, or at least the plane metaphor. I'd also heard that our own Tony Villar, Antonio Villaraigosa, was looking to throw his sombrero into the ring and make a run at it himself. That people
he's busy
are
running that Fortune 500 company, though. What's he?
Herbalife. Yeah, he's all right. So he's thinking about the world's worst mayor for Los Angeles is looking at now running the state. And I thought to myself, it's funny, long before I'd heard anything about this United Airline thing, I was just driving home listening to it on the radio, and I said, Antonio Villaraigosa, who was the mayor, him being the governor would be like taking the worst flight attendant on the plane and bumping them up to pilot. That was essentially what this would do. Like, you were the worst mayor in Los Angeles history, and now you want to run the state that Los Angeles resides in. Oh boy. So we got that. Caitlin would be interesting. That would be
because that's not even a case of, I mean, that's everybody supports you. You know, it's like you get everybody on board because you're obviously going to be for many progressive rights, being a person of being a transgender person, and you're a very conservative person. So people on the right can't say, oh, this is more woke culture, full steam ahead. I mean, how could Caitlin lose?
Well, here's my take based on experience. If Caitlin is going to run as a conservative Republican, there are many or any black conservative Republicans cease being black immediately. You know, Candace Owens isn't black anymore. She's a conservative. Or you pick them. I mean, what it means, you're not embraced because of your skin color like you would be. So Stacey Abrams is embraced. Candace Owens is worse than embraced.
An outcast.
She's a turncoat, right? She's Benedict Arnold. So, you know, whatever grace you think we would extend to Caitlyn Jenner because of the whole transgender, progressive, whatever, second that gal started talking about lowering taxes or school choice or whatever, they just dive on him. I think
that would supersede.
Yeah, that's how we roll. I mean, haven't really tested it as far as transgender goes, but definitely black, Hispanic, female. You will cease being that, or you won't be able to use that anymore.
Right.
We got trending topics coming up. We also have a happy story from Myles, the Riverside squatter in the house.
Yeah.
He burned his house down.
I found out that he was trying to get on the phone, but he's auctioning off cars.
Yeah, he's an auctioneer.
I'm now intrigued.
I know.
I wonder if Tiger's Genesis is in that batch.
So,
it's always funny. I know you guys probably go through this a lot, where you find out somebody's doing something you're interested in, but the person that found out isn't that interested in it. So then I go, he's auctioning off cars. What kind of cars? I don't know. Where is he? I don't know. Are these impounded cars or classic cars? I didn't ask. Why didn't you ask? You should be as excited about it. But he was just texting back and forth, right? All right. So he'll auction off some cars. He might have some insights as to what these insurance companies do with these totaled out cars. Yeah. I do know you can buy your car back. You can ask them to buy it back.
Like beforehand, you don't go stand there with the fan, the bidding fan.
Yeah, I think
you have right of first refusal.
Right.
I think, but then there's also some insurance, pardon the pun, sort of issues about them giving you a car that's totaled. I don't know. I'd be curious.
Interesting.
All right. First, I'll tell you about Simply Safe. If you have 30 minutes, well, then you never have to worry about home break-ins ever again. And that's how quick you can set up your Simply Safe system. So easy to do. You can do it, well, while you're listening to a certain podcast, perhaps this one. These guys are great. They've been with us for over a decade. Peel and stick, up and running in under an hour. If you move like Dawson did, you just take your system with you because you couldn't do it with a hardwired system. You go to simplysafe.com/am. You choose the exact sensors you need. You get help from one of their experts. It'll get to your house in about a week. And then you just set it up, and Bob's your uncle. Go to simplysafe.com/am. Do it today. Get your customized system, and you get a free security camera as well if you do that offer code. That's SimplySafe. 2 I's in there. Simplysafe.com/Adam. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do some trending topics, and we'll get an update from Myles about the house, but mostly about car auctions. Right after this.
Your producing skills are lame. Makes fun of how you're yours. Okay. You seem to only make things worse when you explain to him how Twitter works. No one would want your job. Laxamana, he screams and makes you have to jump to search the internet and make him right. Laxamana, his real name's Laxamana. Laxamana.
Oh, I love that fucking song. I love Fox on the Run. The only good part of my childhood was Fox on the Run. All right, what do you got, Max Banner?
All right. Well, you talked about yesterday how when you're telling companies to unwoke themselves, United Airlines, their ears were ringing.
Yeah, I know.
Well, also, the #1 trending topic yesterday, when we were talking about all of our hot guys, it was actually International Asexuality Day during that.
wow.
And I don't know if you've known this, Adam, but ace is kind of the shorthand version for asexual now. So
Oh, it is?
all my ace people.
Really?
Yeah, shout out to all my ace people.
Boy, remember back like 10 minutes ago when there were like 3 groups, you know, and then we got another group, and then we got another, the LGBTQ, we just kind of
Plus, yeah.
now we're just going to keep, keep adding groups. All right. So there's an asexual group.
Chris
that's-
I was gonna, sorry, Gina, clarify. Is asexual like, what is asexual?
Well, that's what I was going to clarify. That for people, the term means just not into it, not attracted to other people. But asexual in biology means you're able to reproduce on your own. So which is it?
I think it's the first one.
Oh.
Actually.
I
Yeah.
don't think that was last science. The nomenclature.
Yeah, but and speaking of that too, Sports Illustrated, they put out a contest for their new models, and
Swimsuit
their swimsuit
edition.
model, the swimsuit edition. Excuse
Issue,
me, yes. And Louis Fries is a finalist, and he would be the first male model in the swimsuit edition. And Kaylin will put up a picture.
We will not rest.
Oh.
Yeah.
We will not rest until we fuck everything up. Until everything is just fucking ruined.
I was thinking Jason Momoa, but this,
Yeah.
this is the opposite.
So wait, this is
Is he wearing a
interesting.
bikini bottom?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is interesting because, like Brian said, the cisgendered man is the dude that we think of who buys the swimsuit edition. So where does Lewis fit into this? It's not like you said, like a Jason Momoa guy where you can say, I covet those abs. Who are we talking to in this?
Now, this guy looks like an attractive, flat-chested woman,
Yes.
essentially, like a waif model. If you put a blonde,
he's pretty.
long wig on this guy, and he's 135 pounds, like there is no segment. This is now, they have done what, Dove does, or many of these other woke companies, when they get this super fat chick and they put her in the bikini and they tell her to do a cartwheel on the beach, and they're like, this is the new sexy. And it's like, no, it fucking well is not. I do not want to have sex with that person. And like, well, this is the new aesthetic. Okay, have fun selling that to all the guys who read SI.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the question. Who are we marketing this gentleman to?
Yeah, that's my question. Is I have to imagine this year's swimsuit edition sales is probably 11% of what it was at its peak. You know what I mean? If that, I can't imagine people are buying it.
But I think it's just virtue signaling. It's like, who is United Airlines marketing this?
Yeah.
We are going to take pilots based on the color of their skin or their sexual parts, and we're going to weigh that in heavily into our training process or the process of hiring pilots. Who is that for? It's not for the fucking people who are in the plane. And this isn't
Right.
for anyone who watches SI. This is so they can signal to the world that they're woke or progressive or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know that there's any actual monetary end game here.
Yeah, so this is his second time applying for this contest.
How about when I went out for that job at Hot Dog on a Stick all those years ago and I was fucking flat turned down?
Yeah.
You didn't fit the hot pants.
Yeah.
You gave up, Adam. He didn't.
He didn't.
Yeah, so you just submit a photo and a 60-second video of yourself saying why you want to be chosen. There are 15 finalists. 6 will be chosen. So he has a chance to be the first male model in the magazine. Or as he puts it, though, he just wants to be the next. He wants to be noted as the next model, not the first male model. He's a
All
big
right.
Kate Upton fan, too.
I was
Me
listening.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's a fucking big Kate Upton fan. I was listening to oh God, who was on it? John and Ken driving home yesterday, local AM KFI guys, and they were covering this whole story about, and here's where it gets a little tricky. There's a lot of prisoners in California penal system. I think it's California who basically want to be transferred to the female prison. And now all you have to do is say, here's how I identify. You do not have to have had the surgery. You can simply identify and you can get onto this list. And no one sees any problems down the road with guys who may be convicted, I don't know, rapists going now to the female. I would love to. If I ever go to prison, I would like to go to a female prison. I'm stating that out front.
I'd like to go on record as saying if you're convicted of raping a woman, I don't care how you identify, you don't get to go to the women's prison.
And maybe they don't. I
Bigoted
don't know if they. Maybe it's all white collar crime. I don't know.
Okay, then he can do my taxes.
But yeah. Oh, and come on, embezzlers who are mad at their junk, step forward. But yeah, we're getting pretty blurry with the lines here, and it's not. I don't think it's a step toward the light. It's sort of like I don't know if it's Connecticut or what state it is, but the people that hold the track records were formerly men, like all the high
Right.
school track records. I don't know. Is that a step toward the light for the ladies who are not getting the scholarships or coming in fourth or not making the podium for the guys who are the transgenders who are setting the records and track? Like, it's getting really blurry now. Like, whose side should we be on? There's an argument of going, well, I'm progressive. I'm arguing I'm in the corner of the transgendered people. And then there's another part to go, yeah, but they're whooping up on the ladies. All right.
Well, speaking of that, I just wanted to look up some quick things on asexuality, and there's 2 more subsections. There's asexual, gray sexual, and demisexual.
That's that. Thank God. And there'll be 18 more this time next week.
We're going
All
to
right.
run out of letters.
Can't the platypus, what's the platypus's sexuality? The platypus can mate with either sex or can create its own,
Yeah, there's something weird
there's something to the platypus.
And then
And
the seahorse also.
And the seahorse.
Male seahorses carry the babies. Male penguins like to mate for life with other male penguins.
Well, I know that there are some species of frog that spontaneously change their gender if there's not enough of the other gender around.
Right.
Subplot in Jurassic Park.
That's right.
The
Because they're all supposed to be female.
That's right.
Yes, but I think the platypus has something. Max
Yeah.
can look up the platypus, or Gina look up the platypus,
Hold
and you
on.
can keep going. But
I got it
anyway,
right here. It's interesting. It's the only egg-laying mammal,
Oh.
Yeah.
and I'm getting to the part.
It's a
Let's see
cursed
if it's in
creature.
there.
It's a billed mammal.
right. But anyway, good news, SI fans. We have a dude who's going to grace the pages of the swimsuit issue.
We might have it.
we might.
Yeah.
We might.
God willing.
Well, today, as we record this, the national day. We have 2 big days, and weirdly, we got double booked. It's World Health Day today,
Oh, good.
but trending even higher than that, it's National Beer Day today.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Yeah,
The juxtaposition.
I know. It was kind of weird. And I was thinking about you, Adam, and drinking beer on the Man Show every episode. Do you miss it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's a few things I miss as it pertains to the Man Show and beer. So we would tape on Fridays exclusively. I started my work week back then Sundays, so I would work Sunday through Friday night essentially. So I didn't have a lot of time off. I was double dutying it back then. I would show up at the Man Show office and work on the Man Show all day, film bits, edit, pay, whatever, write, whatever, just stay at the Man Show all day. And then at night, I would go into Culver City. I would do Loveline. But I didn't have to do Loveline Friday night. Loveline was Sunday night through Thursday night, which I always appreciated because it gave you your Friday and Saturday nights. So we would tape 2 shows on a Friday. So by the time I was done with that second show on Friday, especially with my double duty week all week, it was time to cut loose a little. Like it was time to drive my M3 off a tow truck. That's basically where I was at. So the first, we started like chugging beers in the first show, and we'd go right to the second show. And I was getting a little sloppy on those cue cards because I had a little buzz working from the first show, So I started with at some point I switched over to the near beer or the O'Douls or something in the first show. So at some point, or half the shows, I have probably 10% of them. But at the end, and I think I chose a Sam Adams. We did, ask you what beer you wanted. I'd do a Sam Adams. At the end, I'd chug that beer, and then we'd go up into the office. So the sound stage at Hollywood Center Studios was right next to our office. I mean, we used to the Man Show offices were the next building separated by a driveway. So we'd oftentimes sit in the office right until tape time, tweaking stuff or going through stuff. And then we just walk right over, get changed and do it. But when we were done, chug the beers and then go into the office.
Picturing the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. We had the mini, what's that?
Picturing the Wolf of Wall Street.
That's basically that kind of debauchery. We had a mini fridge in there. We'd have some beers. And then everyone would kind of gather up into the office, like the writers, sometimes the guest, if there was, Adam West or something was the guest on that show, or some whomever, whatever. And we'd all kind of end up in the office. And I'd just sit at my desk and drink some beers. And then at some point, if we didn't go home, we'd go to billiards, this billiards place, and shoot pool and drink some more beers. And then at some point, I'd drive the car off a tow truck.
Would Jimmy do the near beer, light beer thing too, or was he going full beer every time?
I don't think he switched to the near beer. Number one, I don't recall that. I think he stuck with it. Number two, the chasm in Jimmy and my ability to read cue cards, to spell, to conjugate verbs, and to
on the fly,
just the English language in general. He's such a crazy, when a writer would present a script and he'd read it, he'd circle misspelled words, not words that would be put into a teleprompter or something. He was just letting that writer know you didn't spell this guy's name right, or you didn't whatever.
Are you pointing at me?
That
I am.
Oh, I'm above you on my screen. I'm above you on my screen. What's going on in your lap?
he was such a good reader and speller and writer, and I struggled with it so mightily that I didn't want to show up for the and I knew that I had trouble reading out loud and cue cards and stuff like that. And then I knew I was standing next to someone who was fantastic at it. Jimmy, when he would do his sports stories, on K-Rock, and he was doing the sports guy stuff, he'd be at his computer seconds before the mic went hot, with Kevin and
Talent.
Bean, and he'd rip this page out, and it'd be like a full page or 2 pages, and he'd just run in and sit down and just like mow right through it. And I was like, oh my God, I could never, back then, couldn't get close to that. So I don't think so for me, I didn't want to be impaired because I was already impaired in terms of being a product of LA Unified School District. And he wasn't. And like I said, the time I would sit in my dressing room oftentimes and just go over the script or go over the cue cards because I didn't want to fuck up in front of Jimmy. I didn't want to embarrass Jimmy. I knew I was bad at it. I knew he was so, it's one thing to be bad at something. And it's another thing to have a person next to you who's equally as shitty at it. But when that person next to you is really good at it, it shines the spotlight that much brighter. So I didn't want to fuck up. I didn't want to I didn't want to ever stop taping. We always did it like live to tape. Like if you fuck up, keep going, we're not going to reset or do anything like that. And so I would always read and I didn't want to be buzzed. And like I said, one time, this is when it really dawned on me. I think we were coming back for season 3 or something. And we were just standing behind the door getting ready for the band was firing up, or the opening of the show was firing up and full capacity. We were going to burst through the door and then, hit our marks and deliver our monologue. And we're just, we were just sitting back there. And of course, I would oftentimes have the script with me so I could give it like one last look before I went out and stood and read. Because standing in front of a capacity crowd on TV reading was like, oh, I thought I was just going to die on a construction site and never be outed, But we were just standing back there. And we used to just stand back there like, we'd go back 2 minutes before the show started. We just stand there. And sometimes it'd be like, we'd talk about shit, personal stuff or whatever. And then sometimes it was like, you're on the right, I'm on the left, and who's going to do the throw or whatever. But we were coming back for like season 3 and we were standing back there and Jimmy said, which color are my cue cards? Am I the blue ones or the black ones? Because we had blue and black. So I wouldn't read his cards and he wouldn't read mine. And that just meant to me he hadn't even looked.
No, he didn't need to.
Didn't even need to. He was just going to walk out there, find the right color cue card, and then just mow.
Read
right
like a
through it.
superhuman.
Yes. Yeah. I think we have Myles on. Should we talk?
Yeah, let's talk to Myles. Before we do that, though, I know you know this, Adam, but Gina and Bryan, did you know that Mike August is a speed reader?
Really?
Okay, yeah, but Gina had the same reaction.
Blows my mind.
Okay.
He won competitions.
Yeah. I know.
Do you have to? How do you win a competition? You have to do reading comprehension. You can't just say done.
Right.
How do you prove
They
it?
ask you questions about.
They
what
probably
you
ask you questions and stuff. But yeah, he'll just blow through a book.
Yes. It all sounds dubious if you know Mike.
If you
but
communicated with him.
these were awards that were given in junior high.
My grandfather was this, master, this genius scientist, and he was too. And literally, when you watch someone do that, they're literally just reading down the page. Like they don't go back and forth like the rest of us. They're just reading down the middle. I can't do it. I'd like to see August do this in person.
Highly skeptical.
Yeah. Next time he's in, we should.
But
we
you
should
can't
challenge
be
him.
skeptical of the blue ribbon he got when he was 13. I mean that still hangs on the wall.
Yeah, I wonder if those skills have perverted themselves into what we see today.
It's possible.
Very, very possible.
Like a guy with martial arts training attacking the elderly.
Yeah, like
Is that what you're
Gollum
saying?
finding the ring. You know, like he was
Either way.
he was Smeagol at one point.
Listen. No one hates Mike more than me, but you got to give the fucking devil his due. It's like it's like a guy in a wheelchair saying, "Oh, you were a track star in high school." It's like, yeah, I was. Like that's what he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's amazing. Thank
you gotta respect it. Oh God, what was I about to say? Oh, you can go in there, Max Bad, and look for, along with the Debbie Dutzen School of Trucking commercials I used to see when I was a kid in the Schick Center for quitting smoking. The other commercial I would see repeatedly that I never brought up is the Evelyn Wood Speed Reading School.
Oh,
What?
not familiar.
Evelyn, if you look up Evelyn Wood, you will see a person that is, one of the grandfathers of the speed reading movement. And they had courses for speed reading in the 70s. Like, here's what you should.
The Evelyn Wood 7-day speed reading and learning program.
How was I the worst student in my high school? I
You
shouldn't
didn't
have
sign
just
up for
been
the
in.
program.
I should have, but I should have been in the middle somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Why the worst?
With just
All
your
right.
your capacity to retain information, you should have at least middled.
I should have at least middled.
I don't mean to be a point shitter, and I know nothing about this person, but there's apparently something called Failure Magazine, and the headline is Scan Artist: How Evelyn Wood Convinced the World That Speed Reading Was Important.
Yeah, well, she did. Thank God my family had no money to send me to that shysters. But also, I would argue that Failed Magazine probably went bankrupt 14 years ago. So,
It's probably true.
Did it succeed?
So we'll see if we can find one of those commercials. Myles, are you on? Myles?
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
Up at the house in Riverside because the people had to come stuff out, and so I'm watching it. If it ends up cutting out, just hang up on me. I don't want to be that dude. But the service is bad up here.
All right, but did you get your home back?
Okay, so they ended up leaving in the middle of the night, kind of like skipping town, and then left stuff in the house. So we came back in, changed the locks, got the house back, and then Easter morning, he showed back up here with the sheriff trying to get in, saying they have my things, and he was trying to move his couches, only he was there. I'm on the phone with the sheriff going, well, is he there with people to help him move couches? Does he have a truck or a moving truck? And the guy goes, no, he doesn't have any of that. I'm like, well, then he's obviously there for some reason to scam. He's not here to get anything. So we'll set up an appointment. The balls on this dude to say,
Oh, my God.
We'll have a couch in there and the washer and dryer also. And you're like, oh, really? Yeah.
Well,
Come on by.
let's couple things, set the table. So Myles and his wife bought a home in Riverside, I think paid cash, and the person who sold him the home never left the home, and it's been 15 months, and the sheriffs and the lawmakers will do nothing to evict this person, and now he slipped out and you slipped in. I have this relationship with bravado, which is I hate it, and I'm also wildly attracted to it. Like the fact that this guy'd go, where's my love seat, dude?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy that he would even knock on the door,
It is insane. So he was having his wife text for him, which was a whole other thing where I'm like, I'm going to give him the opportunity to see me face to face there, and I'm going to let him apologize. And then, of course, he's not going to take that opportunity. He doesn't want to see us. He's just hiding behind her like he's been hiding in the house the whole time, which is the least surprising thing ever.
The only story that rivals that in the bravado department is, I don't know, did you guys hear that tragic story about the girls that hijacked the Uber Eats driver?
Yes.
No? Oh, yeah.
And the poor guy was like clinging on the car, and they just peeled off,
Yeah.
and he was crushed to death, and the car was smashed, and the chicks got out of the car, and one chick was like, my phone is in there. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's like, you just killed a guy.
Yeah.
You're
He's a sociopath.
worried about
that
the phone.
or the mom of the North Hollywood bank robbers who sued the city.
Oh,
that's
best.
chutzpah.
That is chutzpah. Yeah. Sorry, but there's a new leader in the clubhouse. It's the guy who squatted Miles's house. Hey, Myles, and a much more important subject, you auctioning cars.
That's right.
What cars do you auction?
So I'm an auctioneer for the wholesale auctions that basically remarket. A lot of people don't know this, but every time Hertz is done with a car, it hits 30,000 miles. They remarket it through the auction. They sell it through the auction. Same with all the rental car companies, all the banks, with the repos or lease, all the new car stores that are selling their trades that they don't want to put on their own lot. That's how, and then just wholesalers themselves. But it all gets remarketed through these auctions that throughout the week.
Miles, for a rental car, 30,000 miles has got to be a year and a half old.
Yeah.
These are newish cars, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you're doing, some of them are even newer than that. They can be, somebody could buy a car and then never make a payment on it. You get it right back. It's got 100 miles on it.
Are
So
there
it's everything from, I mean, it ranges from everything from, cars worth hundreds of thousands to cars worth 200.
are there
Myles-
deals to be had?
Yeah, I'm about to give up my lease here. Where do I find you?
So with the internet, the deals to be had are slightly less than they used to be, but there still are deals. They're just not quite what they used to when everybody can follow around exactly who bought what for what and follow around the bin and do everything. The less meat on the bone, the margins are smaller, but they're still there.
Have you
I'll help you guys out.
any thoughts about Tiger Woods Hyundai? Because I want to know
Yeah,
where
if it
that
was
car is.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I saw the accident, actually, because I do on every Tuesday I do a sale that's all wrecked vehicles. So if it was Hyundai that was taking the car back, I believe I would see it. If it's an insurance company, most insurance companies resell their wrecked cars most through a different company that I also used to work for, but I do sell some for Enterprise and Avis. So it would depend. There's a decent chance I'll end up seeing that.
I want
Wow.
that goddamn car. Send me a text.
Let me know what you want in for. I'll get it.
I think
I'll get
that
it for you.
I think that car's going to be worth a ton of money. I think memorabilia's going through the roof. And the thing about the memorabilia is it keeps expanding, like the aforementioned LGBTQ with the plus and all that kind of stuff. It kind of started off with like guitars and art and stuff like that. It's getting wider and wider in terms of what they is considered memorabilia. Tiger Woods shall go down as one of the biggest figures of this generation, sports or not. And that's the car. I mean, there was 100% news coverage when Tiger crashed that car. I don't care what they were in the middle of, on the border with Fox, the Floyd trial with
Love
CNN.
Boat reruns.
They burst right in. That jumped to the top of the news cycle for everything. I mean, really think about how big a celebrity you have to be in a car accident, and everyone who's doing news stops and goes, here's what's, hey, Senator, we can't talk to you now. This is breaking, So, and everyone knows the car. I just think that thing's gonna fetch a pretty penny one day. Certainly an awesome conversation piece to just park it in your garage. Anyone who came over for a barbecue, that'd be the best beer walk it to the garage ever, right?
You know who else you could lease it to? This was a big thing in high school. You can lease it to all the driver's ed classes.
The drunk
That's
driving.
right.
Yeah,
This is what happens
exactly.
when you're texting or drinking and driving.
Yeah.
Right. You want to go in
I like
with
the
me?
idea of just having it in your backyard while you're barbecuing, and it's just sitting there, and you and your buddies can talk about it. I think that's the best idea so far.
It's going to be worth something. So the insurance companies, because we're all trying to kind of hammer this out, pardon the pun, but the insurance company would pay for the totaled car, and then the totaled car would become the property of the insurance company, right?
That's right. Yeah, and then they'll sell to the auction, and then whatever it brings. Or, I mean, they may have a reserve on it, but usually with cars that wrecked, they wouldn't unless they think it's, I mean, I've never seen them say this is a special, celebrity crash car before, but I mean, I guess anything's possible. But yeah, they usually just sell for whatever it brings when it's that wrecked.
Interesting. And it happened in your neck of the woods, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, if it ends up being if Hyundai owned the car and Hyundai is going to sell through, then I probably will see it. If it was Enterprise or Avis, probably see it. If it ends up being like a State Farm or something like that, then we don't have their account. So that would go through a different auction. But yeah, I'd say 50-50 chance.
Oh, you gotta keep this guy's number.
I'm officially intrigued, not just intrigued, but officially
Capital I.
intrigued with this. So, because I guess Hyundai are they Korean? I mean, they're not going to put it in a container and ship it back to Korea. It's out here.
No,
and
they'd sell it. Basically, the closest auction, it's two that they have a contract with. They ship it to, and like I said, the one I do on Tuesdays is the largest one for the largest auction company. So there's a pretty good chance it'll go there.
But
check
it's also
the roster.
it's also part of a police ongoing investigation, so that could be tied up in whatever probate or whatever.
Well,
Yes, it would be.
yeah, but I would also argue that most totaled cars are part of a police investigation because
Right.
somebody did something wrong or was speeding or drunk or was rear-ended by someone who was drunk. Like they're all going through that protocol most likely.
Right. And it did. That's the thing.
Yeah, it did.
It's over.
All right, give me that black box.
You let me know if you want it. I'll get a hold of Max and Pat. We'll figure it out. I'll put the word out.
I would, because I'm like kind of intrigued about this. Now, would you think that thing? You think there'd be a bidding war on that? Do you think if the word got out, there'd be like some dick was talking about it on his podcast or something dumb like that? Do you,
If there was, it would be the exception to the rule. There's not usually. I mean, even when we get good condition, someone's like, "Tell them this used to be Shaq's car," and I'm like, "They don't care." So, I mean, maybe this one is different because it was so part of the news, but it also is completely smashed and it's going to be salvage title and probably unrebuildable. So, I mean, shouldn't bring that much, but I guess you never know.
well, you definitely wouldn't want to put it back together because then you just have a Hyundai. You'd want it as is, preserved. I wouldn't. And by the way, it's interesting, but the new trend in the collector world is like if Porsche wins Le Mans in their 911, whatever, they win the GT class, when they bring that car back to the Porsche factory, they do not clean it. They leave the bugs stuck to it. You know what a car looks like after a 24-hour race?
Like
if
it's been on the moon.
it's been raining and shit. They literally will clear coat it and leave the dust and the stuff the scuffs from the tire rubber, the car that flew off in front of them, the bugs stuck to the windshield. They just leave it as is. So
And shellac it.
I would do that with Tiger's Hyundai. All right, Myles.
I hate to be that guy. Hyundai and Genesis are actually technically separate companies.
Oh, they are now.
Yeah, they are. So it's not a Hyundai Genesis; it's a Genesis.
Oh,
Sorry, continue on. I just hate.
It's like Lexus and Toyota. Are they different as well now? Officially?
Those are separate companies. I don't know if the same relationship, but the Genesis is its own company.
All right. Well, I would like.
It's much more similar to Toyota Lexus than it would be a completely separate company. It's like Acura, Honda.
Yeah.
Toyota Lexus.
I get
Hyundai,
it,
Genesis.
but they created a different market, different name. And thanks, Myles. Good luck on the house.
Thank you. I got tickets to your show out at Sea Legs next month. So
good.
All right.
Well, let's get that car, man.
Tell Max and Pat to be in contact with me. We're not able to make this happen.
Head on a swivel. You go find that thing. Do your sleuthing, man. This is important. Sure, you got a house, but I don't have a Genesis.
This is now the most important thing going on in my life, that I got this thing all settled up.
That's
so
right.
I'll start looking for it.
Prioritize. Thank you. Bye, Myles.
Thanks, brother.
We'll see you at the show, which is sold out, so I hear.
Poor Myles,
Good.
just when he finally can take 5 minutes to breathe, now he has to go hunt down this car.
Walls are stuffed with cheese.
Well, I had this thought, as I was driving in, I was going, that Genesis. And then later on, Max Zapata was like, "Hey, Myles, the guy at the house in Riverside, he's going to be calling in for an update." And I was like, all right. But the fact that that's his territory and that he auctions off these totaled cars, Jesus Christ, people.
It's beshert.
It's
Beshert, as the Jews say.
It's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, do we have an Evelyn Wood Reading Dynamics commercial from 1979 or something?
These people have a tremendous advantage. They're dynamic readers.
It's helped me in school. I can get sleep on finals weeks instead of staying up all night. It has brought my grades up substantially.
Besides learning to read fast, I also learned how to take notes, how to study for a test.
And the college boards, it helps a lot.
Evelyn Wood will show you how you can become a dynamic reader in a free reading dynamics lesson designed to increase your reading speed well over 50%.
Your free Evelyn Wood Reading Dynamics lesson is being held today and tomorrow
Where's
at
Evelyn?
these locations. In Chicago at 12:15, 5:30, and 7:30 p.m. at the Institute. We're on 80 North Michigan Avenue.
Steve
Suite
Allen
9.
hosting? It was crazy. That guy. All right. Anyway.
Evelyn Wood was long dead at that point, I think.
You could probably find a more modern color one somewhere for some other day.
Oh, wait. Right as I said that, I clicked on her Wikipedia because I saw here that she was born in 1909. So I was like, yeah, Evelyn, Guess when she died? 1995.
Wow.
She had a good run.
Good run of bilking people.
And now, Alcoa presents Definitely Not a Jew on the Adam Carolla Show. Dateline, Marathon, Florida. A 62-year-old man was injured in a bicycle crash after unexpectedly running over an iguana. Definitely not a Jew.
David Fishof has joined us. He's a music producer, he's a sports agent, he's an author. There's a doc about his rock camp. It is called Rock Camp, the Movie. It's available now on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, and more. And in a world where every doc seems to be about some women that were abducted and tortured and sold into slavery, and everything's a big fat bummer, someone's got dementia, and it's a fucking bum fest, this is a fun, feel-good rock and roll documentary. Just what the doctor ordered.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. You know, I'll tell you what makes this film different than most of these music docs. You know, all these other docs, you know, they take the bands, they made it big, then they did a lot of drugs and women, and they lost it all, and then they went back again. We don't tell any of that story. We just go straight up.
And I know you started as an agent, because I'm looking here and I'm looking at some of your clients when you were a sports agent. Phil Simms, Mark Bavaro.
Yeah.
That was a beast of a man. Vince Ferragamo. Speaking of good-looking NFL quarterbacks, Vince Ferragamo of the Los Angeles Rams, he was the Garoppolo before Garoppolo. Like in the matinee idol good looks department, that was Ferragamo, right?
Absolutely. You know, it was amazing when we traveled together, how the women used to just look at him. And my favorite story was I was on the road with him when he was playing, and the offensive lineman called, "Hey, Vinny, you got to come up to our room." It was a Saturday night. They're on lockdown, you know, and you got to come to our room. We got these girls here, and they just wanted to see you. And that's, you know, Vinny was a walking, he's one of the best looking. And he still is. Yeah. He looks great today, doesn't he? He looks amazing. He's aged really well.
He's pretty dreamy. I'll give you that.
Started in the Super Bowl against the Steelers. Lost a good game. And most importantly, you represented Jack Hacksaw Reynolds.
Oh, wow.
I love that guy. Was all man.
He was amazing. You know, the story is just about him. He was so crazy. You know, he would sleep in the locker room because he wanted to save money. I mean, on rent. I mean, I used to have the coach would call me, Bill Walsh, the late Bill Walsh, call me. I can't get Hacksaw. He doesn't want to move to the small side or the weak side. And he'd call me. Now, I know nothing about football like these guys, but he wouldn't listen to anybody. He says, "You got to speak to him." I love Hack. He was amazing. And, you know, they gave me how to be a winner. That was really what I learned from these ball players.
Bill Walsh would call you, but I'm thinking, so Hacksaw went from the Rams to the 49ers, or from the 49ers to the Rams?
No, he went from the Rams, and Georgia Frontier got upset at me because remember, I don't know if you remember that I took Vince Ferragamo up to Canada. Right. We couldn't make a deal, so she cut him. She cut Hacksaw right before the season, and he was a free agent. So we were flying out to Buffalo, and we were going up to Buffalo to sign a deal with the Bills. And Bill Walsh tracked me down in the airport, and he said, "I really want him. What will it take?" And I gave him a number, and he said, "I want him." So Hax turns to me and said, "What are we going to do? We got to go to Buffalo." So I said, because the press is waiting for us in Buffalo. So we went to Buffalo. And Marv Levy was the coach then.
Wow.
And Marv Levy said, we sit down in the room, and Hack's all nervous. What are we going to do? I want to play for San Francisco. I want to stay in that same division. And I said to Marv Levy, I turned to him, I said, "Well, how are you going to play Hacksaw? How are the Bills going to play him?" And he said, he's going to have to try to make the team like everybody else. That was the way it was in the NFL years ago. And I turned to him, I said, Sinatra doesn't audition for Vegas. We're out of here. And we signed with the 49ers. And I got to tell you something. It's amazing how he turned that team around. John Montana did it on the offense, but Hacksaw really, turned it around on the defense.
What a name. What a nickname. I
What a
sort of
nickname.
remembered him as like big pork chop sideburns and a mustache. Like he was all dude. And the story, as I heard it, is he was a linebacker, maybe at Penn State. I don't know. I mean, how dude is Hacksaw Reynolds? Look at that dude.
Yeah, Tennessee. Played in Tennessee.
I guess after a bad loss, he hacksawed a car in half. Was that the story?
Yep, that was a true story. That was him. He did everything different, Adam. He got dressed in the hotel room on Sunday mornings at 6 o'clock in the morning. He was dressed, ready to go for that game. A lot of crazy things, but boy, did he know how to win.
Somebody needs to do a goddamn documentary on Jack Hacksaw Reynolds now.
Absolutely. And I got some great stories too.
So how the rock and roll fantasy camp, what was the genesis of that for you?
So, I was doing sports and I represented like Bavaro. I love you said Mark Bavaro. I got together with him a year and a half ago before COVID just to see him up in Boston. Yeah, he was a beast. And I love the athletes. They were great. But I was sharing office space with Shep Gordon and a bunch of other managers in New York. And I got a call and someone asked me if I wanted to represent the association. I said, the association of what? But I didn't know. Wendy, right? And I saw the gold records on the wall. And I said, boy, around Shep's office and all these other musicians. And I said to myself, I want to go in this business. So I went and signed the association and then went on tour with these bands. And my last tour I produced was Ringo and the All-Star Band 30 years ago. And I came up with this concept of putting Ringo and this All-Star Band together. And after the fourth show, they were playing a joke on me. And I didn't know it, but Levon Helm and Joe Walsh got into a fight in the locker room. And late Clarence Clemens and Nils Lofgren said, you better go in and break this thing up because this tour is going to end. And I had mortgaged my home. And so I ran in there and to break up a fight between Levon Helm and Joe Walsh, as you see in the film. And they both one guy had a knife and blood and the other guy had broken glass and blood, and they were fighting. And they both turned around and stuck their tongue out at me. And while I almost got a heart attack, I realized how much fun they had on the road. So I said, if I could create this environment of all these rock stars and people can see this and be part of it, it'd be amazing. And that's when I created the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
In the movie, they do point out that it was fake blood. There was not blood drawn.
It was fake blood. You're absolutely right. And it was a rubber knife, and it was a sugar coned glass bottle.
A breakaway glass.
Right, bottle. Yeah.
Well, that's still great.
Yeah.
Think about it. The Association is a great band, by the way.
They were great.
Cherish is the word I use to describe. That could be, hey, Chris. Find
Hey,
Cherish
Wendy.
by the Association.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
Never
great
My
song.
Love. Yeah, and I
Never
didn't really
My
know.
Love.
Right, I didn't really know much about them. When I went to see them, and they wanted me to be their manager, I said they started playing me the new album. All the bands they want to play the new records. And I said, play me the old crap. I want to hear the stuff that I remember from the dentist's office. And boy, they sounded great. They sounded great. Yeah.
Cherish is the word I use.
Maybe not rock and roll fantasy camp material, but
All the feelings that I have.
It has to start somewhere.
you know this one, Gina?
I do. It's in Pretty in Pink.
Where were they from, those guys?
LA, California.
Oh, wow.
And did they do Along Comes Mary?
Yeah.
I like that song.
Songs about marijuana.
Oh, come on.
What do they say? Remember
Stop
those
the
weird
slander.
subversive songs? Like, this song's about pot. Don't listen to it. This
like
song,
it.
these guys cooked like this song. Oh, the clam. Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Not too shabby, huh?
Nice.
You know this one, Chris?
I do know this one.
And every now and then I spend my time at climbing Bruce and Christoph's Falls, Sydney. And then along comes Mary.
Yeah, they're good. Are they still around?
You know what? They are around. I don't know if there's any original members, but they still tour. I like all those bands. Bill Medley said it best. Bill Medley said a great line to me once. He said, "David, you know why we had all the hits in the 60s and 70s? There's only 9 notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. We stole all the good notes. So we took all the good songs. Those songs are unbelievable."
Yeah, you're talking about the Righteous Brothers, right?
The Righteous Brothers, yeah. He did a tour for me. I did Dirty Dancing as a live tour. That was another idea I came up with. Put that on the road. That was fun.
What was Ringo's at the height of Ringo's all-star band powers? Who was in that band?
My first band was unbelievable. When I brought Clarence Clemens, Joe Walsh, Levon Helm, Rick Danko, Billy Preston, Nils Lofgren.
Wow.
Hold on. Levon Helm, Jim Keltner on drums.
Great drummer.
Yeah, puts a great bands together. And then the one with Peter Frampton was great with Jack Bruce. And I worked hard to put all these, get all these musicians together.
No offense. It's a commentary on how great that band is. Ringo might have been the least talented musician in the band. No offense to Ringo, but those are some heavyweights, man.
They were heavyweights. But I love the line Joe Walsh said. He said, we're a democratic band. Whatever Ringo says, we do. You should see the way they all come together and they play homage to this amazing Beatle, and he's a legend, and how many times people say it's McCartney, it's Lennon, and I have to tell you that what makes it, if Keith Moon was in the Beatles, it never would have worked. I think what made the Beatles is after running camps for 25 years, it's all about listening and hearing, and it's about all these amazing parts that come together. So he's a lot of talent, Ringo.
So when you're going after rock and roll legends to be a part of the camp, how does that process work? I mean, and who's told you to fuck off?
I got a lot of fuck off stories, but and nicely. Hey, I got one today from the lead singer of AC/DC. So I mean, yeah, it's not just it's not for him. If they'd only see the film, they would realize that it's for everyone. Some people got egos, but here's the process. The process started with, the first camp, I called everybody I met on the Ringo tour and people I knew. Mark Farner from Grand Funk. I called Mike Love of the Beach Boys. He came. Nils Lofgren came. Clarence was in town. He lived in Florida, so he came. And I put together these great people. And it was financially, it was a bomb, and I decided I'm never going to do this again. But then I kept getting emails every day. What are you going to do this rock and roll fans camp? We're going to do it again. So I decided I was going to do it again after I was at a Polestar convention. And they were playing a game, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, with Sammy Hagar and Tommy Shaw and Tommy Lee. And when I saw it, they asked the question, who created rock and roll fantasy camp? David Bowie, David Byrne, David Fishof. And when Sammy Hagar said David Fishof, and these guys remembered what I did, I said, I'm going to do this again. And so I went and reached out for more people, and I turned down, but then I got people said, it's a cool idea. Let me try it. And I think the thing that really turned it on was I went to England to see Roger Daltrey, and he had just done a tour for me called the British Rock Symphony. And I turned to him and I said, Roger, can we talk about my rock and roll fantasy camp? He said, yeah, I'll come over. And I went over there, and the whole night I'm talking to him about do a camp. Roger, can you do a rock camp, fantasy camp? And he turned to me and says, you should do the Thompson Twins. You should do the Village People. The word in England, camp, is campy. And he didn't understand what I was talking about the whole night, in his accent, and I said, Roger, it got me so frustrated. If you had someone that you could jam with and you could meet, who would your fantasy be? He says to me, Levon Helm. You introduce me to Levon Helm, I'll do your camp. And, I turned to him and I said, wow, Levon, because he did my first Ringo tour. I said, Levon, he's really not in great shape. And, Levon had some issues. And he says, whatever you want to give me, give it to him. I want to meet him and I'll do your camp. And I called Levon, and Levon said, I'll be there for you, David. He was such a sweet guy. We spent a lot of time on the Ringo tour together, and I helped him afterwards. I worked with him, got a record deal. So Roger came to the camp, and once he did the camp, and then he got so into it that he said to me, where are these bands performing? I said, the Bottom Line. And 2 days, he says, I'm going to perform with them. And he stayed. And that's really, Roger's amazing.
it's hard to be cynical when you watch this doc. And trust me, we've all had an ass full of cynicism, especially the past year. And seeing Roger Daltrey talking to normal people, I'm a normal person, and being able to identify with that. Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and you think to yourself, oh, they don't want to be there. They look like they want to be there.
They're musicians, and it's not a meet and greet. It reminds them all what it was like when they first started, and that's what you see in the film. I think you see these rock stars like you've never seen them before. Sammy Hagar, Nancy Wilson. They come across as they're real people. They're real people, and I think they get moved at the camp, and because it reminds them of them.
Yeah.
I love the documentary. The question I had after watching it, some of those campers, I guess you would call them, the people who pay to show up, they can really play. How often is it must happen from time to time, that some of the campers are frankly better musicians than some of the stars? Because rock and roll is not always a meritocracy. Sometimes it's about the look. Sometimes it's about the whatever. You had a great song. But like some of these guys and girls can really perform.
Pistol. I can't remember his real name.
Pistol Crocker. Okay, so let me answer that question. They're great. They're all great. But I once asked Phil Simms, I said, hey, can we go play some football together? Can you throw the ball to me? And he threw that ball, and it went in my heart, and it came out my ass. Okay? These guys are pros. They know what they're doing. I played basketball with his son, Chris. I went up for a jump shot. He blocked it, and I broke my elbow, fell back the other way. They do with these rockers. They play the instrument for 5 hours a day, and this is their art. And you can't go to work every day and then play guitar on the weekends and think you're going to be as good as these people. So while they think they're good, I think and they are good. There are also so many people who think they're good and they're not really that good. Sure. These pros. There's a difference between, hey, listen, go out and catch some passes with Jason Sehorn. You'll see how good Jason is.
I wish.
That was a great example with, I think it was Dave Mustaine. It's just he's just kind of cool and chill. Can I borrow somebody's guitar? And just, melt your face off. But Bryan, that question made me think, what if you have a ton of money or you can afford it? You've always wanted to do it and you can't play for shit. What happens to you?
That's James Dolan.
Okay, so I went to Dolan once, and
I said, who that is? He knows.
Yeah, I know what James Dolan is. I said to him once, I said, you should come. He says, I live the fantasy, so I get it. He lives it. He could buy his way onto any tour. But
he's the owner of the Madison Court, the Knicks.
The Knicks Garden. No, he gets. Listen, he's got a private plane, and he can afford to take any artist with him, but God bless him. He's, you got it, flaunt it. The guy, the guy who owned this Microsoft. He was the same way. But I will tell you that what I love about camp so much is that the camp is really about these counselors. So if you see the Rudy Sarzos and the Tony Franklins and the guys who really mentor the band for 4 days, I tell them this is about putting together a football team. And you guys can understand Belichick, as I'm a huge fan, I wear my Red Sox, I'm a crazy fan of Boston teams. Belichick gets the same draft picks every other team gets. And every year he wins. And, how come Bill Walsh, they all win? Because they know how to put together a team. And that's really what the counselors are about, is putting together a band. So they could take a weak drummer, they could take a strong guitar player, and they could put the band and they can make them sound amazing. So really, that's what it is.
That Tony Franklin, what a standout celebrity from the movie. Charming and pathos. And who wouldn't want to work with him?
Yeah, and these guys are so giving back, and it's like, that's what I love about it. That once everyone walks into that room, it's like, and I tell them in advance, it's not about you, it's about these people. So you're right, Adam. There are musicians who said, screw off, it's not for me. But the ones who have done it, God bless them, because Sammy Hagar says in the film, it's the hardest work they have to do. It's a lot of work singing with 14 bands. But
I do stand up, and most stand ups will play little clubs, just to work out, just for the craft, just because I love it. There's a handful of guys that aren't leaving the house without you cutting a check for $100,000. But most musicians, stand-ups, they're artists. They want to perform, they want to hone their craft, they want to be involved with it. I mean, it was a passion they had when they were 10 years old, and it's still coursing through their veins. And I like that. I like that about us as a species. You know what I mean? I like that most, like, I don't know why it's sort of connected. I don't know any really successful person that has a field of expertise that does not freely share information with anyone who asks them for their time, or can you mentor me, or can you guide me, or can you give me your advice? The most busy, richest people I know will always carve out time and love sharing their expertise with others.
You're right. And I think what the artists always say is we get paid to travel. We'll perform for hours. So I love that, when Slash came, he played for 12 hours. I think he worked harder than he ever worked before. That's, Nick Mason from Pink Floyd. I mean, there's no one who's got more money in rock and roll than Nick Mason. He's a genius, and he owns planes, he owns cars, he owns so many businesses. The guy came for 4 days. I say come for 2 hours. And for 4 days, he hung around, then wrote an article in GQ about it. Again, when once the business is done, you're walking into a room and you're going to play your craft and do what you want to do. You can play for hours.
I was at just to bolster your planes and cars, Nick Mason. I was at the Goodwood Festival, car festival, the historic, or the Festival of Speed in England 2 or 3 years ago, and Nick Mason was there with his Ferrari GTO. And that car's $85 million, and he was driving it.
Yeah, and what a sweet guy. I mean, 4 days he stayed. I love Bill Wyman. I mean, come on, you got to be a Rolling Stones fan. Bill Wyman came to camp, and I turned to him at 6 o'clock. He'd been there since 10 in the morning. I said, Bill, you want to go home? I wanted him to go home because, hey, as you know, you've seen the film, I observed Sabbath. So I wanted him to go home because I had to leave. And he turned, and so he said, why do you want me to leave? I said, well, I got to start the Sabbath. And he turned to me and he says, well, the Sabbath in LA, starts 5 hours. In 5 hours, you got time. So, so again, they love what they do. And I think that's been the fun part of it.
We alluded to it earlier, we mentioned you've gotten plenty of fuck offs or polite versions thereof.
Right.
Who's your white whale? Who's the guy or gal that you're like, it would just be perfect?
Well, listen, I love that Mick and Keith did The Simpsons. You saw that. So,
oh, of course.
Oh, that was amazing for me and amazing for us. Hey, Paul McCartney. I mean, Paul McCartney would be a great one for me. But, there's so many of them. I'm hoping that once they see the film, that they're going to turn around and say, hey, I get it. I get it. So let's hope, but there's so many great ones. And there's so many young artists, too.
Yeah.
That, the guys from Weezer, Fall Out Boy. I'd love to get those guys to come.
That was my follow-up question. The rock stars you have are of a certain age demographic. Do you actively seek out younger and younger artists as the years go on, just to keep it?
Sure.
You got to evolve and you got to keep it fresh, obviously.
I had my two biggest camps last year were Jerry Cantrell and Stone Temple Pilots. Right. I mean, as younger people, they want to get into that. So yeah, I'm constantly going after younger people, and that's what I love about the film. I'm hoping they will see what it is. And that it's really about being a musician and sharing your knowledge, like you said, Adam.
Well, and that's the other thing when you hear about a project and you tell a A-list celebrity, hey, do you want to do it? And their question is, who else is doing it? Right. Well, guess what? Now we have on video who else is doing it, and you're probably going to want to be a part of it.
Exactly. Gina, that's the way it works in our business. Even putting together Ringo's band. Right. I'll never forget when 30 years ago, I had to convince the other person to do it. You have to tell the other one, and it's always bouncing these balls in the air. But once they do it, it's like your show. God, everyone wants to do your show now. You guys started. You were the first ones. I remember when you started, Adam.
Well, and thank you. So you brought up Ringo's band. I'd like to get back to Jack Hacksaw Reynolds for a moment. No, you brought up Ringo's band, so you bring up Joe Walsh and James Gang and the Eagles and all that stuff, and then you got Levon and the band and all that. Are they taking turns playing each other's hits back in the day?
Yeah, I mean that's how it worked. Everyone went around the room. They went around the horn. As you say it, everyone took. It started with Ringo. Would start with a song, and then we turned to Billy Preston. He did going around in circles, and then Joe Walsh, Life in the Fast Lane, and Nils Lofgren. He did his hits, and the songs were just amazing. And the way Joe Walsh every night, all he had to do was Rocky Mountain, Funk 49, and the
Right.
place, I saw what he could do to an audience, and it literally blew my mind. And
Were guys who are that seasoned, like the All-Star band, would they have to rehearse much to play the other person's song, or were they so good that they picked up on it really quickly?
No, they were nervous. I never forget Ringo said to me, "Oh, make sure they have name tags." One of my tours, I forgot because he didn't really, he worked hard to prepare for those songs. Because Colin Hay even said to me, he said he spent hours learning the songs because you're coming to a camp, you're coming to a tour, and you want to make sure you don't mess up, someone else's song. So it's more nerve-wracking. So yeah, they rehearsed. They came in rehearsed, and we used to do 2 weeks worth of rehearsal because there were a lot of songs. And then you would sing the music in advance to them. And back then we would send tapes and CDs, and today you can do it easier. But they would practice. Oh yeah, they would practice, and they would listen to the version that would be done. And again, you don't want to come there and mess up.
I'll give a plug for the doc one more time. Rock Camp, the movie, and it's available now on iTunes and Amazon and Prime and Google Play. And again, 93% with the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and 90% with the audience. So we're into the 90s on both sides of the aisle. So take that to the bank. Let me hit Geico, and then we'll come back and we'll do some news, and David can hang out and crack wise with us. Do you own, do you rent your home? Well, you do one or the other, and then there's your automotive policy. Good news. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. Good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around the home. So you go to geico.com, you get a quote, you see just how much you could save when you go to geico.com and get your bundle working at Geico. That is geico.com. All right, we'll take a quick break. David will hang out, and we'll do the news right after this.
And then, David, so we'll just do 30 minutes for news, and then right after that, we'll get into your next podcast with Adam to take anyone.
Give me the news with Grad, news with Gina Grad, breaking, viral, weird crime, protest, politics. Give me news with Gina Grad, stuff they saw on TMZ, Joe Biden, Kamala, meet news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
There's been a lot of talk about vaccine passports, and Biden is weighing in with all this talk about, are we going to have them? Are we not going to have them? He says no. The White House will not support a federal database or universal credential. In her briefing on Tuesday, Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the government is not now nor will be supporting a system that requires Americans to carry a credential. There will be no federal vaccination database and no federal mandate requiring everyone to obtain a single vaccination credential. Meanwhile, in New York, they've become the first state to roll out a digital vaccine passport. It's called the Excelsior Pass. No
Gina,
idea.
And I know they keep pretty good records when you go to get your vaccine. So even though there's no official passport, and I probably won't be, they know who's gotten their shots.
Right. And no idea yet what the Excelsior Pass is going to afford you. But you're right. I mean, I think, doesn't it make sense that Biden would say, it's not me, I'm not doing it?
Yeah, it feels a little Big Brother, a little Orwellian, but I'm sure we'll keep track of everyone. Or maybe we're at herd immunity. I mean, Los Angeles, like we were talking about 2 days ago, had one death. I don't know what we had the day after that, but there's the people who have been vaccinated, but then there's also the people who got it.
Right.
Too.
True.
So between the people who have had it, which is a lot of people, and the people who have been vaccinated, which is a lot of people, we may be at herd immunity now.
Yeah, they said herd immunity is between 80 and 85%. I mean, that's what herd immunity is. Like, that's the goal in herd immunity. But if Newsom, if our governor here is willing to open it back up in June, then again, like we've talked about before, we probably could have opened up 3 or 4 months ago.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
It'll always be 2 months past when it's safe.
You know what was
Right.
crazy? My daughter has a volleyball game this weekend, and
Indoors?
yeah, and they were like, yeah, they're not letting parents in to watch. I'm like,
Oh, you lucky bastard.
I know.
This is where you start to protest, Adam. Come on.
But it's weird. Like, I don't know, the restaurants are open now, the public parks, the spaces, the salons. I don't know. There's still random rules floating around out there.
First of all, Adam, stop complaining.
No, I'm not.
Second of
It's
all,
in
yeah,
deep Orange County.
I went to Philly's Best last night and got a little Philly cheesesteak in a bowl, which was amazing. And I thought, oh, I'll go in and then I can decide, I can go over to the pickle bar and get everything I want. No, they still have a table. They have the almost like a vinyl window at the door with a table in front of it. And it still says, come up to the table. Come up to the table, place your order, and please go stand 6 feet away. So I don't think they got the memo. We're moving past this.
If you meet someone at a restaurant, they will let you sit indoors now. But if you're meeting someone there, you can't meet them at the table. They have to wait for you.
For your whole party.
Yeah, or the two of you. Well, if I said, Gina, I'll meet you at Parkway Grill tonight at 7:00, and I texted you and went, I'm running a little bit late, I won't be there until 7:10. It's not like you're sitting at your table having a drink waiting for me. You're standing by the front door.
Oh, really?
They don't want you. They don't want you breathing all that. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all, but those rules still apply. David, did you get vaccinated?
You bet. Oh yeah, I was on. It was so funny because I snuck into Dodger Stadium, and I'm born in '56, so I'm 64, but I snuck in under 65. But what happened was, the irony was, I went back for the second shot, and I show up there, they didn't have it. I don't know if you guys saw, they didn't have it, and so NBC came over to me and interviewed me, and I was on the nightly news, Meet the Press. I got more publicity on not them not having it than the movie. It was incredible.
Well, how did that work where they didn't have it?
They didn't have it. So I'm waiting in line, and lady from NBC, comes over to me and says, can I interview you? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm waiting. I'm there at 7 a.m. And she said, are you upset that, they don't have the vaccination? And I said, Rock Camp, the movie is available on Amazon Prime.
Always plugging.
I was just, your question should be, how am I supposed to run a rock fantasy camp when I can't get vaccinated?
Yeah. And then she said, no, give me a good quote. And I gave her a quote. I was upset. I got there, but I felt safe because I already had the second, the first one. And the next thing I know, I'm on the nightly news. Saturday night, I'm on it. Monday night, I'm on Meet the Press. But you know what? I'm glad I got it. I feel, you feel a little freedom, and I'm hoping to start live camps in October. I went to Florida last week, and let's see. Florida's open.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you're doing Vegas, right?
No, I'm Vegas. I'm going to do the Scorpions in March. I see the artists. I don't see many of the artists, the big artists, aren't going to be touring this year at all.
Right.
They don't want to work a half a house.
Right.
3/4 of a house. So no one wants to lower their prices, and also the cost of doing these tours. So, but Florida is open. So my plan is to do camps in October in Florida and down at Hard Rock. And if you saw that big guitar they have there, a little monster hotel. So that was where I'm going to start. We'll see what happens. No, I do them everywhere. I do them in Nashville, wherever I get the artists.
That's great. Well, we've been talking a little bit about Matt Gaetz and kind of following this fakakta story that we can't totally figure out. But here's another little piece of info. The New York Times reported Matt Gaetz sought blanket pardons for himself and his political allies from President Trump shortly before Trump left office in January. So the Times, citing two people familiar with this discussion, said Gaetz asked the Trump White House in its final week to grant him blanket immunity for any crimes, which may or may not come up later if you might be convicted. But apparently, top White House lawyers and officials view the request for a preemptive pardon as a non-starter that would set a bad precedent. And as we've talked about, Gates is being investigated for a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old and the traveling, which becomes sex trafficking law issues. But no dice with the blanket pardon.
Well, here's my take on that. I'm curious where Matt Gates's fiance is in this mix. Like,
awful quiet.
She's been kind of quiet.
Getting ready for the prom.
I don't know how the minors work, and maybe the minor's not a minor anymore. But
Well,
if you're not a
point.
minor, if you're 17 and a half and this shit went down a year ago, then you're a major now, so you can talk about it. I got a problem with the New York Times in that I'm not saying that this didn't happen, but I've heard so many fucking sources, unnamed sources, that the New York Times has reported on coming out of the Trump administration. 5/8 of them have been wrong or not substantiated, that I don't believe unnamed sources anymore from the New York Times. Now, if they have paperwork or named sources, I'm 100% in. But there were so many stories out of the New York Times over the last few years, like unnamed sources say that, Trump went to Arlington and farted on a grave, and it's like, all right, well, give us the names and show us the documentation. So that's kind of my take on it. But if there's lawyers and the lawyers have paperwork or that kind of stuff, well, then I'm in.
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, from what I understand about, especially print journalism, you still have to be, the idea is you're still pretty ironclad if it's a source that can't be named. But like, don't we all feel better when it's a named source, when it's, somebody that can answer for this?
But this is a good lesson for the New York Times. You guys shouldn't have come up with 10,000 unnamed sources stories in the last 3 years, and I would be all in on this unnamed source story. But there were so many unnamed source stories that they had to do a retraction or something recently. I can't remember what the story was, but the point is too many unnamed source stories from the past have made me feel dubious about unnamed sources from the Times in the present, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Taking that at nobody's face value.
Yeah, you're not alone. There's a lot of people. I commented on the story with a joke that you and Drew used to say, which is perfectly normal, perfectly healthy behavior. And people were like, "Oh, unnamed sources." I'm like, it's too bad that's where we are. That you're right. You're not alone.
Yeah, well, it's sort of. I was watching. It was kind of like there was this whole 60 Minutes expose on DeSantis from Florida. And I was like, I haven't watched 60 Minutes. I'll get into it in a later episode, but I haven't watched 60 Minutes in a couple of years. It used to be my favorite show, but it got kind of woke and they got kind of politicized. And then I turned it on last Sunday and it was just a hatchet job on DeSantis. And they cooked a lot of the stuff and they whacked a lot of the stuff up. And DeSantis isn't even in the top 10 of guys to go after, but CBS is going after him. They're not going after Cuomo and they're not going after Newsom. But
was it the water crisis or COVID?
It was COVID,
okay.
and it was a pay or play thing with a big supermarket chain, and it turned out to just be a cooked, pretty hatchet job on it. And CBS is sort of showing their cards. They're going, we don't like this guy. I imagine they don't like DeSantis because they think he's probably going to be a player in the GOP party coming up, and they're trying to knock him down a peg. But it just made me realize that, now I'm watching 60 Minutes or now I'm reading the New York Times, and I'm dubious about some of the stuff they're reporting. I have question marks, and it's kind of I don't want to be in that place either, but I feel like if you're a news outlet, right or left, you will get yourself into that place if you do too much of this.
Yeah, it's too bad. Unnamed sources have been just a tool of journalism from time immemorial. Deep throat, you know what I mean? But here we are.
Yep.
So, Seattle parents told Fox News's Lawrence Jones that they are outraged and concerned as their children are starting to return back to school for in-person learning this month, while Seattle public schools grapple with major homeless encampments on the campuses of two of its schools. And I believe it's the middle school and high school. And here's just some B-roll while I'm telling you the story. Students are set to return following a year of remote classes, of course. Jones visited the campuses and pointed out that there are drugs and needles everywhere. Parents have been calling on the school district to remove the encampments for months, but have had no success. Jones says school officials have said they're trying to resolve the issue, but they can't guarantee it'll all be worked out by the time the little ones show up for classes. And this,
are they on the school property?
Yeah, this is like, this is up against the school.
They are, well, if you think about it, if you're going to pitch a tent, why do it under a freeway overpass? Why not move out into a nice deserted soccer field on a campus with like a fence around it? So like they're kind of going where the getting's good. It's really just the whole homeless thing is kind of a lesson in humanity, which is people are going to do what they're going to do, or a certain percentage of the population are, Seattle's one of the more expensive places to rent property or own property in the country, but you can live in Seattle for free. And if you're going to live there, don't live in a vacant lot, live on a nice manicured lawn and a school. And I also heard that the school doesn't want to get rid of them, that they don't want to be the ones to shoo them away. So they're going to have to figure that out. But it's officially Sodom and Gomorrah and a free for all.
Well, and speaking of that, I don't have it on me. I should have. I don't have it, but I heard on KFI yesterday on Gary and Shannon, they're talking about they're building homeless units of some kind on the beach.
Oh,
so
yeah. I heard that story too.
I'll take one.
Yeah, they're and then
front property.
There's this thing like not in my backyard kind of mentality, and it's like, let's be honest. If you bought yourself a $3 million home in Venice and they were looking at taking the local bus depot and converting it into a homeless shelter or whatever, would you really want you and your kids, a block away from the place where all the people who are, shooting smack and shitting themselves? Like, I mean, there's got to be a solution, but I don't blame those people who are like, I don't want to live next to this. I don't think any of us would want to live next to it.
Well,
Dawson,
Adam.
sorry, Dawson's shaking his head.
That story basically stems from Venice has become such a shithole that their solution to clearing up some of the homeless in Venice is open up the other beaches to more homeless people. That's their plan.
Well, also, I don't, what I don't get about human beings, which is sort of like Venice is a perfect example of what happens when you just kind of turn a blind eye to something, or this compassion, you know what I mean? It's like we're going to show compassion, and then it just turns into a homeless shit show in 10 minutes. You can go to Santa Monica, or you can go to Beverly Hills, or you can go someplace that doesn't tolerate it, and they just don't tolerate it. Like
Santa Monica's your example?
Work that way. Well, a lot better. I'm looking for a place right next door to Venice.
Okay, so the homeless is pretty bad.
But they're not
They're
not bivouacking everywhere. Like Venice, you will see a difference when you drive from Santa Monica to Venice. I didn't want to pick Encino because it's like the other side of the hill.
No, Marina Del Rey is a good example.
Marina Del Rey, I'll go the other direction.
And just to clarify, these are apparently temporary single occupancy tiny homes. So somebody go over and snap a pic because I want to see what these look like. Again, I'm interested.
They just built probably about 50 or 60 of them right at the Victory off-ramp off of 170. I'll take a picture on my way home and show them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They sure did.
But they're not doing anything about the hundreds of people who are still living in amongst the freeway on and off ramps. Nobody's there. It's just all they're doing is inviting more homeless people to be everywhere.
Dawson makes a great point because that's kind of what I was thinking. It's not either or. We've had I think it was the mayor of San Diego on who was saying like, here's the deal. We're going to build this, bridge housing, and it's going to be wonderful, but you don't get to choose. This is where you're going and it will be very nice. But out here, it's like, we'll build it, use it, don't use it. So it's just kind of everywhere.
Yeah. And it just kind of reminds me that sometimes being compassionate is about the worst thing you can do. Like that's what we do. We look the other way and go, oh, leave him alone. And it's like, okay,
but
get back to me in 5 years.
But if you dropped somebody from another country or another planet into the middle of LA, and I think you've made this point before, and just had them drive around and you didn't say anything, do you think they would look at encampments and say, this is compassionate?
No, it's the least. It's sort of, I don't know. It's kind of like saying, let your kid eat candy for breakfast and sleep till noon. You love them, don't you? You want them to be happy. You want to do. You don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to argue with them, do you? They're going to get angry. And then there's all these people. Then at some point, every fucking thing becomes a movement, and then you have homeless activists, and now you have people like campaigning for their right to sleep in their own shit in the park that you used to play with your kids at. It's like
at Echo Park, yeah. Who
are these people? I mean, look, the homeless people have mental issues and they have drug issues. The people I'm more intrigued with are the housed people who become the activists, who become like the voices for the junkies who are sleeping in their own filth. That to me is a more interesting mindset. But anyway.
Well, there's a little, I'll take one. These are like little houses. Sort of almost like mid-century sheds.
Where is this?
I don't know if this is.
This is in LA.
Yeah. Is this in North Hollywood by chance?
No.
Looks familiar.
Right. It looks very much like that, and then you can also tell it is.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
And then they also have trailers of the higher end porta potties.
Yeah.
So it seems like that those in showers. I give it 3 weeks before it's an open drug market.
I'm going to do some math. We've done this experiment. Does anyone ever want to go down and go to the subsidized housing in the south side of Chicago? Or any of these places are just known as the ghetto now, all the place. I mean, my understanding is those people had to pay rent, not a lot of rent, not the kind of rent that you'd have to pay on the nice side of town, but it's still basically cheap rent, government subsidized housing. What one of those fucking hellscapes didn't turn into a total fucking shit show almost immediately? And if we're going to give them these Sears gardening sheds for free, this shall turn into a shit show as well. All right, next story. Sorry.
All right. Well, here's a story I think your mom, Adam, is not going to like because who are these people and why do they make so much money?
Oh, I thought I was in it.
So Netflix, oh boy, it is the salad days for Netflix. They paid $469 million for 2 sequels of Knives Out.
Go home, Netflix. You're drunk.
A huge slice of that money will go to lead actor Daniel Craig. Craig and director Rian Johnson are reportedly getting $100 million each to make the sequels, which will stream exclusively on Netflix. A Hollywood insider said, yes, it's overpaying, but Netflix is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. It takes a proven theatrical commodity off the board and puts it in their pocket. Now, Netflix gave Rian Johnson complete creative control, and in return, they ensured that Daniel Craig will be back to star as Benoit Blanc in both.
Foghorn Leghorn.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
460 something million bucks?
$469 million.
Wow. For two
sequels.
And those aren't big budget movies at all.
I mean, they had big stars. They had big stars in them, but they were. Yeah, you're right. These are not action movie tentpole movies.
And I think technically, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think technically it's 3 locations in the entire movie.
Yeah, it's not very many.
The house,
I really
the diner,
liked
and the
Knives
warehouse.
Out. Yeah, I really like that movie, but that's eyebrow raising.
You see Knives Out, David?
No, I didn't, but I'm going to watch for that kind of money. I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
See what you're missing.
Crazy. Listen, if they earn it, they earn it. It's like, how many times have you been talking about all these ball players making $50 million? There's a market out there, if they can earn it, God bless them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
Well, maybe Jeff Bezos wants to help stake him a little bit because he's once again the world's richest person, according to Forbes. It was real touch and go for a second, but he is now worth $177 billion, up 64 billion in just a year. But the list's biggest gainer is Elon Musk. His fortune rose to 160 from 126 billion to 151 billion, so he's firmly number 2. There's also this French tycoon Bernard Arnault. He's number 3, then Bill Gates, then Mark Zuckerberg. The number of billionaires worldwide is up 660 from a year ago, and the net worth of the billionaires tops 13 trillion, which is 5 trillion more than last year.
Speaking of Bill Gates, all 3 of us are being controlled by Microsoft right now because we got the vaccine.
Oh, cool.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
you want to know when I go to my kitchen to my bathroom?
I haven't got the chip put in me yet.
That was the stupidest fucking thing. Bill Gates wants to control. Fuck off.
I didn't even know. First off, I don't know how any. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, right? Flat Earth and things like that. Like I don't know how you pull that off. I don't know how you put a microchip in a serum.
Nanobots, dude.
Okay.
So,
and then who does this benefit?
That's what I'm saying. The guy who's pledged to give away all his money and just fucking donate his mosquito nest to every person in Africa somehow wants to take over the world.
But also,
the fuck
here's
out of my face.
The other, but I never get that riled up about it because it just seems too insane to me. Like I don't know. It's like flat earthers. It just seems. They seem like Scientologists or something. I'm not that interested in it. It feels insane.
Funny you should say that. So I mentioned the other day, I think it was 4 parts that I finished the QAnon docuseries, and the guy who did that, and spoiler alert, they sort of point to who is behind it, and you will be woefully disappointed if you're a follower. But they sort of liken it to LARPing. Now, Adam, I know you know what that means because you're into live action role play.
That's when you catch a catfish with your hand.
That's right.
That's noodling.
Damn right it is, sister.
So I'm from the Midwest. But LARPing is like, Dungeons and Dragons, and like you put on your cape and do your spells, and so it's kind of that's what the documentary is kind of saying, that it's almost like Cloak and Dagger, sort of a game for adults. And so when you start, when people say, they're coming out of this and going, oh, this thing we were told something big was supposed to happen on, March 5th or whatever, and it didn't. And they say, I shouldn't say because you'll isolate the drop, but they say, I really thought that these people were eating babies and drinking the blood of babies. Okay. I really thought it. So, these are adults. And that's when you think like, yeah, what do you know? But these are regular old people, to go to work and.
Right. But so here's my general consensus on all this stuff. There are people in this society who are like truly racist and like want to do harms, fear people who look different than them. It's not 72% of the fucking country, like many politicians would want us to believe. And I believe they're nut jobs who are flat earthers who think the Twin Towers were brought down, where there wasn't a Jew in the building, and QAnon and babies and drinking blood. Never make the argument that they do not exist. They would have to exist. We got 330 million people. I would be surprised if none of them were racist and none of them did believe in QAnon and do all this kind of stuff. I just don't think it's at the level that they want us to believe it's at. And the reason I don't believe it at that level is because I never see any real world examples of it. I've never met anyone who's deep into QAnon. I don't know anybody who's a deep racist, other than myself, obviously. It's like, why isn't it manifesting itself in a much more assertive way? Or why isn't it a part of my life? All right, so I can be naive, but they're out there, and we can make fun of them. I don't look at it as a threat. Yes.
I think it's just a bit dismissive to say that because these individual conspiracy theories, they're Venn diagrams. The guy who believes the 9/11 conspiracy also believes the other conspiracy, and then you end up with Timothy fucking McVeigh, who blows up the federal building in Oklahoma City. Then you end up with the guys at the Capitol riot. These guys are all, they believe some version, if not all versions.
Right, but what did the guys at the Capitol riot do? You know what I mean? Like what happened? Their chick got shot in the face.
Yeah, there's a handful of dead bodies, I guess.
How many dead bodies?
I don't know. It doesn't
Well,
matter.
would you want me to tell you?
Yes, please justify the actions of the Capitol rioters.
All right. Well, I can tell you how many dead bodies there are.
How many?
There's one who was shot by a cop. There's a cop who they said was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher, but he wasn't. And then there were 3 people who killed themselves, I think. And then there's Chewbacca guy. I mean, these are not. I'm not being dismissive, Brian. This is not a full attempt to. This is not a coup. This is not them taking over our system.
But you end up with events like this. Richard Reed.
Yes, you do. But what's the black? What did Black Lives Matter do?
I forget it.
Well, what is it? Yes, there's events. That's what happens. Well, what do you want to do? I mean, what was it? Tim McVeigh was one guy.
Yes, but he's one of these guys. These guys that believe in the conspiracy theories.
Yes, all right, but you're making my argument. I'm saying there's one guy or there's a handful of guys. It's not the country we live in.
I totally agree with that.
But how do we prevent Tim McVeigh's of the world? That's what I'm saying. Tim McVeigh is pre-QAnon. What do we do? He has his thoughts.
I don't know. I honestly wish I had the answer. Obviously no one has the answer because we can't prevent things like this. School shootings and whatever.
Right. But it's not who we are. It's not our society at large.
Totally agree.
And, the Capitol thing's a rally of hundreds of thousands of people, and a small percentage of them fucking break down the door and push the cops around and do a bunch of reprehensible shit. But it's not us. I mean, same with Black Lives Matter. It's like they protest, they're peaceful and whatever, and then a small group lights a shoe store on fire. Like, unfortunately,
100% right. Please don't think that I'm saying this is a much more widespread thing than it is. I haven't said that, and I would never claim that. I'm saying that you end up with things like this. But maybe there's no way to prevent it. Maybe that's just a symptom of society. You'll always end up with a crackpot who does a thing.
Well, I mean, we had this kind of shit, before the internet is what I'm saying. Like, there's just a percentage of fucking nut jobs who do reprehensible things that we should all condemn. But I just don't. I'm not arguing with you over what happens or what's reprehensible. What I'm saying is the narrative that we create QAnon and that creates this army of people that is out doing this thing. It's way overblown. That's what I believe.
I agree with you, and I didn't make that point. I hope people understand that.
I got it.
You also have so many media outlets now too, right? So all these media
everyone's
outlets,
running with something.
Yeah, if you multiply one incident by 100 media outlets, it's much bigger than years ago.
Yeah, and there's a right and left version for everything, and they all take this thing and they blow it up, and then we sort of believe we're living in that world. I mean, we think. We're talking about Jim Crow 2.0 and systemic racism. That's not the society we're living in. It isn't. This is all just blown up. And, it's sort of like me and Newsom and COVID. It's like, do you think COVID exists? Yes. Do I think he's going way over the top with the rules and regulations? Yes. They can be the same. It's like saying, do you think racism exists? Yes. Is it woven into the fabric of America? Yes, it's a big part of our past. It's not a daily thing in America, even though it's being spoon-fed to us on a daily basis, and I don't think it's making things any better.
To your point about you, unfortunately, so it's irritating, but it's like somebody reached out to me and said something, like ask a question, they go, with that anti-vaxxer Adam Carolla. And I said, well, first of all, before I answer whatever question you had, that statement is wildly inaccurate. Where would you even have conjured that in your mind? Oh, sorry, I just assumed. I'm like, oh, you assumed very, very wrong.
Well, it's like my kids have been at home from school for over a year. There's no more problems with COVID. It never really affected young people. Schools should have been open 6 months ago. So I'd like that. And I'd like everyone to get a vaccine. Like you can have both those thoughts. I would like to wear a mask inside of a supermarket, and I would like to not wear a mask walking on a horse trail. while the sun is shining. So does that make you a masker, an anti-masker, or vaxxer, an anti-vaxxer? Yeah, it's just you can be a little more nuanced, I think, and that's the problem. We're not getting into the nuance part of life.
Agreed.
All right, Chris, give me the wrap it, because I got to do a take a knee with David as soon as we wrap here. So let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina Grad.
That was the news with Gina Grad.
All right, last but not least, there's Geico. Do you own, do you rent your home? Will you do one or the other? And Geico will make it easy to get your bundle on when you get your auto policy and you bundle it together with your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around the house. So what do? You go to geico.com, you get a quote, you see just how much you could save when they make it easy for you to bundle at geico.com. That is geico.com. All right, I'm going to be in Appleton, Wisconsin, Skyline Comedy Club, May 7th and 8th, doing stand-up there, and we'll do live pods there as well. Golden, Colorado coming up, Royal Oak, Michigan coming up, Kansas City, Missouri coming up, the documentary Rock Camp, the movie. Feel good about yourself for 90 minutes or so and enjoy that on iTunes, Amazon Prime, Google Play, and more. And the website, rockcamp.com. David Fishof's going to join me on Take a Knee. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can hear our whole conversation. Thanks for joining us, David.
Thank you. I'm glad the guys love the film.
We love it. Until next time, Adam Carolla for David Fishof, Bryan, Gina Grad, saying mahalo.